Hello, everybody. Stephen Mead here with Domicile Real Estate, where we are on a mission to help California's renters become homeowners. And a lot of you know us for our regular weekly market updates, but one of the things that we've gotten a request for, and we've had a lot of questions about, is there something and specific information that is just for first-time home buyers? And I feel like there isn't really a lot of market stats or things that are geared specifically towards first-time home buyers. And I think if you're a person who's been considering that, you'll understand there are a lot of market dynamics that are very particular just to sort of the entry level segment of the market. So what we did is we wanted to put together kind of a short weekly market update that goes over some of those things, that gives you useful sort of actionable information that is just geared towards first-time home buyers. And so what we did is we kind of thought about the two sort of most important factors for first-time home buyers. And perhaps the first thing that everybody thinks of is, and we call these our two A's, is affordability, right? Are homes actually more expensive than they were 2 years ago? It's a question we're going to answer today. And then the other A is availability. And if you're anybody who's been sort of casually observing or watching the news, you've heard that the market is on fire. And I would say that is even doubly so in the entry-level segments of the market. So we're going to kind of go over some affordability and availability statistics today. I promise to keep it pretty short and informative. And then we're going to our goal is to do this on a weekly basis so we can kind of track some of these things over time, just like we track sort of our bigger whole market statistics. As on those statistics, this is for the Southern California home market. And for Southern California, we kind of qualify that as Los Angeles and Orange counties. So without further ado, I'm going to kind of jump into some of our specialty stats that we've created just for first-time home buyers. And our first one here is home prices. And I want to talk a couple things about this first, because there's a lot of things on here that are important. So I'm going to sort of grab our pointer. And one of the things you'll notice is that we've actually divided this into entry-level homes, like detached homes that are traditional that you're thinking of, 3-bedroom and 2-bath in this case, and then entry-level condos, 2-bed and 2-bath. And then we're providing our statistics. Since this is our first one, I wanted to give a little bit of historical context. We've got 2 years ago, 1 year ago, and then as of August 27th, 2020. So that's obviously our most current data. And then, one of the things you'll notice here in our subtitle is first quartile prices in Los Angeles and Orange counties. And I'm going to go off screen share because I want to explain this and do it once, because that sounds kind of like it's from another language. One of the common statistics that people use is median home price. You probably heard that term, median home price. And what that means, if you're not familiar, is a median home price is if there were 100 homes that sold last month, the statistic that you'd be looking for is, okay, what did the 50th home sell for out of that? Like, what was the middle priced home? Not an average, but out of those 100, if it was higher than the bottom 50 and less than the top 50, what would sort of be that middle number? Well, the first quartile is just like that, but instead of saying we're trying to go to that middle between 0 and 100, we're actually trying to go in the first quarter. And the reason why we do that is because that's a much better approximation of what an entry-level buyer would be looking at, right? Like, you wouldn't necessarily be looking at the middle of prices or the median. You'd be looking in that sort of like, what is at that first quarter? And so let me jump back in the graph, and I can kind of explain what's going on here. So if we jump back into this, I think what's interesting to notice sort of how these numbers have changed over time, right? So obviously, as we've expected, that home price has gone up, right? 2 years ago it was $545, then it was $558, then it was $615. So I mean, just a really big jump. If we look at our condos, which are shown here in red, the condos have also gone up, but it's been a much more gentle increase. So that's kind of something important to think about over time. But what's also important to look at is these absolute numbers, right? Even as of right now, that first quartile in Los Angeles and Orange counties for a 3-bedroom, 2-bath standalone home is $615. And for our 2-bed, 2-bath condo, it's $430,000. Those are actually pretty reasonable numbers, and we're going to get into why those are reasonable numbers here in just a moment. So if we go on to our next slide, one thing that we did is we calculated a total monthly payment based on two things: the prevailing interest rate at the time, as well as that median or that first quartile, that entry level price. And then we base this on 5% down payment because we wanted this statistic to have meaning for first time home buyers. And this is the total payment, which in the case of the condos also includes a $300 HOA fee. So if we go ahead and we look at that statistic, what's interesting is to note what sort of happened between 2 years ago and now. You'll notice that for both condos and single families between 2 years ago and now, that monthly payment has gone down, right? And that's a very surprising figure. And I'm going to go off screen share, just take a second. I think intuitively, most people feel like houses in the last 2 years, if you say, have homes gotten more expensive? Has it gotten harder to buy your first home? I think over 90% of the people would say yes to that question, but they would actually be wrong. And the reason for that is because of the precipitous drop in interest rates. So as you can see, our total payment, which includes taxes, insurance, all of these things that are part of your housing payment, for our 5% down entry-level single-family home, we are at just shy of $3,500 a month. And for our two-bedroom, two-bath condo, we are right around $2,709 a month. I actually think those are pretty reasonable numbers. I think when you look at market rents, what does it cost to rent a single family home? What does it cost to rent a two-bedroom apartment? And remember, these payments actually include paying off principal as well. So, when you compare that, these are actually pretty favorable numbers compared to renting right now. And that's not usually something we see in Southern California. Kind of our final graph here is regarding affordability. And this is our final sort of affordability number. And what we tried to do is we said, using conventional lending standards, what is the minimum amount of household income necessary in order to afford that payment that you saw in the last graph? And again, we see kind of this interesting pattern. 2 years ago versus now, it's actually gone down both for the single family and for the condo. We were at around 88,000 2 years ago. We're at 85,000 this past week. And for the condos, we were at 71, and now we're at around 66,000. So these do assume that you have no other monthly debts. So these are kind of the minimal household income required to qualify for these payments. But this just kind of gives you an idea and a baseline of where do you compare on going into some of these entry-level properties. And the other reason why we sort of chose these entry-level properties is when we went back and we started looking at these numbers, no matter where you have a job, we felt like there was something around that price within a commutable distance. Almost entirely across LA and Orange counties, there was a way to get something that would be one of these prices. And we wanted to kind of give people sort of a really realistic number for these at things that they might face. And so, as you can see here, if you're looking at your income, this sort of gives you an idea of, how do you compare? And again, this assumes zero debt. So if you have car payments and student loans and credit card payments, your income required will be a little bit higher than this. But, we really wanted to give people a realistic look. Now, I said the second thing we'd be discussing today was availability. And this is actually right now, I think in the present market we're in, which is very much a seller's market, this is just as important as affordability, right? Because just because you can get a loan doesn't mean you can actually find a house. It's pretty rough out there. We're seeing multiple bids on most properties. So we wanted to kind of put together some stats so we can track this over time. So it's not just some kind of flimsy anecdotal figure. I'm not a fan of these anecdotal figures. I think we use them when we have to, but I'd much rather have real stats, something we can compare to. And I can say, hey, things got better this week, or things have been getting better the last month, or things have been getting tighter the last month. To me, that's actionable data if you're somebody who's really considering buying your first home. So our first affordability chart is something we call absorption rate of new listings. And again, we ran this based on our definitions, right, of our entry-level properties, because we run an absorption statistic for the entire market for our under million and 1 to 2 million. But I wanted to really break it down between single family and condo, because I think that's really something that a lot of first-time home buyers sort of struggle with. The decision that they have to make is which direction they want to go. And you'll see our absorption rates are just through the roof on these entry-level properties. You know, we've got 96% for entry-level homes and 93%. And I'll tell you what these numbers actually mean. Anytime we are over 80%, it is absolutely a seller's market. And anytime we are over 90%, I consider that a hyper competitive market. And what is a hyper competitive market? That means that you are going to see multiple bids. You are most likely going to be paying over the list price for a property. But it also means something else that's very important. It means that in general, inventory is shrinking, meaning the supply of houses is getting smaller and smaller when this absorption rate is 80% or higher. That's not a hard rule, but it's a general guideline, and I think it's definitely what's happening in our market. Now I'm going to go to our second slide, which is sort of a corollary to this, right? Another piece of information that's useful, and that is our days supply of homes. And what this statistic is telling you is it says, if no other new homes came on the market, right? If suddenly that spigot of new listings stopped, how many days would it be before we ran out of houses completely and there was nothing left for sale? And what's interesting about this chart is it really tells you that single family home, that 3-bedroom, 2-bath is a fundamentally different market in terms of availability than our entry-level condo, because we have 26 days, which is an extremely short amount of time. Most professionals and economists, when they call about normal supply of homes, it's like 3 months, maybe 4 months supply of homes, and this is less than 1 month. Now, our entry-level condo market is at 54 days. That is still incredibly competitive and not a lot of inventory, but it's about twice as good as our entry-level single-family home market. And so that's definitely something to consider when you're in the marketplace. You know, if you're having trouble getting beaten out on offers, you might find that you have an easier time getting your offer accepted on a condo than you would on a single-family home right now. Anyhow, this is our first week doing this. We wanted to create actionable, real data that was useful to you. We'll update these graphs so we can sort of chart these things over time. We're probably looking to launch this and do this every Thursday or Friday morning or afternoon. We haven't decided our exact launch time yet. But anyhow, just want to thank you for watching. Obviously, if you have any questions or comments, or if you are considering buying your first home, we would love to work with you. Definitely reach out. Our contact information is, if you're watching this on Facebook, you can reach out through Facebook Messenger. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can reach out through comments or via sending us a message on YouTube. And if you were seeing this in our email, definitely there's lots of contact information at the bottom there, and you'll see some information at the end of our slide. We are glad to have you with us, and we're excited to hear from you.